All right. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Really happy to be here. Thank you so much for the introduction. And before we begin, maybe, can I have the clicker, please? To Thank you so much. Thanks. So I hope everyone can hear me clearly. Yeah. Before we begin the session today, I just want to take a quick 2 minutes to share with everyone why we are actually here today. So this session is brought to you by the Singapore FinTech Association, the Women in FinTech subcommittee, and we are a subcommittee dedicated to promote gender diversity in the FinTech space. And before we begin and before I give a deeper introduction to our speakers, I would like to show you some numbers for the women in fintechs. So according to the statistics, right, less than a third of the world workforce is actually in the technology area. And according to a research done by Deloitte UK, they are about one third of the workforce in the fintech sector at the moment, but for senior fintech leaders in the senior management role position, there's actually only 17%. And let's look at what we have in Singapore. So I think in Singapore we are not doing too bad. I think we are progressing really well, and we can see the statistics actually have gone to the positive direction. And before I go to the next, I just want to stop a little bit and just give a few seconds for everyone to pause and think. So at the current pace of change, so obviously we are progressing towards the positive direction, but at the current pace of change, how long will it take to actually close the gap? So according to a very recent research, it's going to take more than 100 years, apparently, until the economic gender gap is closed. So this is exactly the reason why we initiated this panel today. And we think this is an important topic for our fintech ecosystem because ultimately technologies are built for human. And without good talent, it's really difficult to progress further. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our panelists. And first, I'd like to introduce Dalal. So Dalal is flying all the way from Bahrain to Singapore. So Dalal is from the Economic Development Board of Bahrain, and she has been with the organization for over 16 years. And her work actually heavily involved with the financial services industry. And we look forward to hearing more from her on what has been done in Bahrain and what is going to be done in the near future outside Singapore. Welcome, Dalal. And second, we have Eileen. And Eileen is not my sister. And yeah, so Eileen is an example of someone who was not in the fintech industry previously, and she has successfully transitioned into fintech industry through a career conversion program. So I thought it would be really inspiring and insightful to hear from her personal story today. Welcome, Eileen. And next we have Nupur. Nupur is the Senior Vice President and Global Head of Talent at NIUM. And she has helped to scale the team globally for NIUM. And before NIUM, Nupur also worked with another tech company, Amazon. And she also has been very active and experienced HR senior professional involved in some of the working group project for the talent development in the fintech space. Welcome, Nupur. And lastly, some of you may wonder why we have a male here on this panel. So we have very, very happy and honored to have one of my mentors, Osman, here today. So Osman has been doing a lot in promoting, gender diversity. And he has also received an award from our former Singapore President, Madam Halima Yacob, a couple of years back. And I'm sure today Osman has inspiring story to share with the audience. That's why I have gladly invited him to be here. Thank you to be here.
Thank you.
All right, so let's begin with Eileen. Yeah, Eileen, could you share with our audience about your career conversion journey? Because I think some of our audience here probably are not in the fintech industry yet, and they are looking to enter into this industry. How was your journey look like, and what has been some of the challenges that you have overcome so far?
Sure. Thanks, Ely. I think as a start, I want to thank yourself and the organizers for having me on the panel. I think it's an honor to speak with esteemed panelists today, given that I've a relative newbie with just a couple of months of experience in the industry. So thanks. Perhaps I could start off with how I've come into this role. So as Ely has mentioned, I've recently shifted into my role at Pilon through the Singapore FinTech Association's Career Conversion Program. My role at Pilon focuses on building partnerships and extending our network in the region with lending partners. So it's been a couple of months, and it's been relatively busy for myself as someone who have very little and I would say non-finance background into the industry. Getting comfortable with finance concepts like cash flow, treasury, factoring. These are very new lingo for me to engage with industry professionals. And as to why I joined the SFA program, I've always had an interest in computing and software in school, but somehow at the choice of time for a university degree, I thought engineering and computing seems like a tough subject, so I decided to move into the humanities instead. So when the SFA program came around, I thought, maybe it's time for me to try my hand at something new, having experience in the private and public sectors in the past years of my working life. So I'm grateful to my company, recognizing experience and value in my previous roles for business developments. And work has been pretty dynamic, and I've been enjoying the environment so far. And I feel that as an outsider, you do have a new perspective on how things can be in a startup. And that perspective is something that is useful and valuable to the team involved. In regard to the challenges that Ely had mentioned earlier, frankly, I think I've mentioned some thoughts about having worries on my abilities with maths and some of the harder scientific probably concepts. But I'm also come to this awareness that it could just be the relative lack of exposure on my part when I was younger to role models in this space. So, but at the end of the day, I believe that with the right attitude and sort of work mindset, there are available opportunities for people who are prepared. So in terms of FinTech users, women take up a significant proportion of the users of products as well. So I believe that we come in with a fresh take and we are able to widen the perspective of how the usage can be conducted for certain apps. And in terms of women in tech, I was just looking up some, doing my own research for this panel. And I realized that women in the tech workforce in Singapore actually takes up 41% versus the global average of 28%. So that's something really heartening to me. And end of the day, I feel that companies want to hire the right talent, regardless of gender, in this tight labor market. And the Singapore government and companies have been making a lot of effort in this area to promote diversity and inclusion. And I believe that my fellow panelists will have more in-depth information and also initiative and personal anecdotes to share. So I guess with that, I'll pass the mic back to Ely.
Thank you so much. I can really resonate with what you say because I was also not from the tech and fintech background, and with as someone who come into the this industry without a prior experience, sometimes it can be quite intimidating, and it's good to have support and like for example, men allyship support from another gender to help us progress in our career is really, really very helpful. So next, I want to come to you, Osman. Can you share with the audience, I mean, I already know your story. what was your motive, like what motivates you to pick up this very unique initiative and do all this work with your already very busy lifestyle? You are still allocating time to help women and champion for women and gender diversity. What is your why? Why did you do this, and when did you start to do this?
Thank you, Eileen. Firstly, my association to this diversity has got nothing to do with fintech, banking. I come from a very humble background, middle class, in Bangladesh, where I grew up. It's a very conservative Muslim country. So I grew up in that environment, and I saw the struggle, actually, my mother went through in her life. So she started her social work, and then she went into politics. And I'm talking about 1960s. You can imagine it's a profession where there are 0 women who would dare to go into that kind of profession. And that too in a very Muslim conservative society. So winding back, I was 10, 12 years old. I was sitting in one of those lunch tables. And while serving food, women has got 2 jobs, right? One is outside, one is at home. And casually my mother said, they had 10 siblings. My mother had 10 siblings, so 4 of them are brothers, and there are 6 sisters. So she also comes from a very humble background, and she said, while I was growing up in my parents' home, I never had the opportunity to have a leg piece of the chicken. I said, huh? Leg piece of the chicken? What's so big deal? So she said, you won't understand that because, the family couldn't afford to have 3-4 chicken in every meal. And by default, those leg pieces used to go to the brothers. And the sisters were never given. So you can see that the discrimination starts in the society, how it comes through our generations, through culture, and the way we are brought up. And that really intrigued me, and from that day onwards, I stopped having the leg piece until today, and I always give it to my sister. And she got tired of that leg piece. But the fact is, that stayed through me in my life as I stepped into corporate life. And I saw my mother's 45 years into that politics in that subcontinent, and how my father remained as a shadow to support my mother in terms of her passion. So my dad was a simple, normal government officer. And because my mother was in that profession, which is very, very different than what you see in developed markets or even in Singapore. So she went through a lot, and as a family, we all had to support. And through that process, it took her 40 years to become the first women member of parliament in the country. We had 300 men, so 299 men, and she was the only woman. And eventually, yeah, she became ministers and all that, and she passed away. But the fact is that resilience and the journey that she took, how, as a male ally, as you said, my dad, and of course the family that needs to stand up, lived through me. And when I started in banking 30 years back, I made it a point. I crossed in multiple countries, in multinationals, managed large teams. But some of my mentees are also here. I started mentoring as a passion. And I only do it mostly to women who are mid-career women, because that's where I see the biggest dropout, if I may say, because of the maternity leave, because of the pressure from the in-laws, because of raising kids. All these things, the women lose that, confidence. And if you can be a mentor and a sounding board, and Eli was saying that it's a matter of trust. Once you build that trust, that becomes a friendship for life. And it is so nice to see that some of these women actually doing much better than what I have achieved. It's a very, very different kind of satisfaction. So I enjoy that. For the last 20 years or so, 50 plus women are supposedly my mentee. But in the previous group, as it was saying, that it's also mentee does the mentoring to you. It's a reverse mentoring. So sometimes they think that I'm doing a favor, but actually they're also doing me a favor because I know what life they're going through, and their life or their age is different kind of challenge that I have no clue. So it's a two-way process. But yes, that's what I do and I enjoy doing, and there is this little story that made me do what I do. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's inspiring, even though this is not the first time I heard about this story. Yeah, but let's get real, right? Because ultimately, this is a business conference. Yeah, so I want to know, Osman, now you are also a business owner. And I want to get your, honest feedback and opinion. Do you really think promoting gender diversity generate tangible business outcome for businesses?
Well, firstly, no business exists without considering the society or a problem of the society that faces. And half of our world population is women, so whether you like it or not. So if you are not being inclusive, and not just about gender, it's about having the diversity of various races, cultures, backgrounds, that brings you a very different perspective in the organization. And I'm sure Nupur and others will be able to give you exact data. But I have seen in my own practical life, example being when I was running as a CIO for Stanchart in Singapore, I formed this innovation drive. And I used to sit with my management team every Friday afternoon hours. And it was open for no formalities. People, anyone in the team can walk up, have some snacks, and talk about the problem statement, and more importantly, what can you do? And I was so amazed to see it was 99%, it's that women would come from a corner of the shop who would talk about a problem that she sees and nobody is solving. And they used to come with solution. So I found women to be more meticulous, smart, very detailed. And let's face the fact, me being men, we are broad stroke, we are with brush and take a macro view. So I think women does bring in a lot of insight and perspective. And some of these are their own feeling and sense that they get being a woman, and men doesn't even have a clue of that. Because the journey that women goes through in her life, and if we are not being able to translate that into a solution, whether in FinTech or bank or insurance or somewhere else, you are actually trying to solve a problem in the society as a facilitator. So I think it makes every sense. And now I have founded a company, and obviously the majority I try and get women because they keep me straight. At home, I've got my wife and my beautiful daughter. But at work, I think these women also keeps pushing me to do more than what I can do myself. So yeah, that definitely helps.
Thank you so much. Now that we have heard from Eileen from the employees' point of view, and also have heard from Osman from a senior manager and employer's point of view, I guess it would be interesting for the audience to hear from Nupur as a very senior, seasoned HR leader, to share with us some, talent practices and what can companies do to adopt and foster a more inclusive workplace.
Thanks, Ali. And I'll try and answer this in two parts. I'll first talk about what organizations can do, and I'll also talk about, more importantly, what individuals can do to create a difference. When we think about organizations, unfortunately, even today, diversity is still a numeric problem. They think about filling a percentage of quota, they think about getting to a certain percentage, and forget the intention behind it. We just saw, the statistics which basically said that 30% mix are women, but only 17% make it to the top. So getting women into senior leadership positions, but not giving them the avenues to succeed, not giving them the voice, is only a losing war. So I'll urge organizations to basically look at it not as a numbers problem, but actually as an intention to actually make a difference. The second thing is, you see the organizations make a lot of assumptions on behalf of women. Ambition has no gender, and we shouldn't think that women are less ambitious than men. Organizations often make assumptions that women are not willing to basically take larger roles, are not willing to get into confrontational situations. They believe that feedback to women need to be more courteous than critical, because they may not be able to take it well. And when you look through this, you feel that men have always got more constructive feedback than women, because there is an inherent discomfort in being able to kind of give critical feedback or constructive feedback to a woman's life. And the last thing I would say about organizations is, the practices they actually adopt. Whether it's to do with talent acquisition, or whether it's to even define the job description. Research says that women only apply when they're 100% ready, but men apply when they're even 60% ready. So how do you define even the job scope of a role? Do you want the must-haves? Do you want the good to have? Are they performance impact based? How do you make promotion decisions? How do you have hiring loops? If you just change the promotion decisions to instead of asking that who should be promoted to who should not be promoted, it can make gender equality much better. And similar to what organizations can basically, instead of hiring, if we can ask, are you open to relocation? Instead, at some point of time, would you consider relocating? You would see the applications that you would get on a job post is much more inclusive than what we get today. So there are a few things that organizations need to do, but you need to be intentional about making these changes.
So, just to add, Nupur, isn't it that true that this is where the confidence comes in, right? As a male ally or as a mentor or as a senior, to give that women that courage that you are
Absolutely.
good. So you are not 50%. Men are like 40%, but they have a bigger voice on the table, so they take the trophy.
Yeah, true. And if you look at today, the way the executive teams, the CXO teams are made, it's still male dominated. And while we're trying to get to a head start, it's still 100+ years where you can get to equality. So it's it's definitely the responsibility of organization, which includes men and women, to make this more.
I think it's very important. Like when I was running a large team and I saw this, whenever there is a women empowerment conversation, you walk into the room and you see a room is full of women. There's no men. And how does that work? So I think it's very important, every organization, to bring in the men, because they need to change their psyche. And if they're holding those positions and not changing, how are you going to break the ceiling?
And very important, I think slightly controversial, is there is an inherent discomfort in our society for one-on-one mentoring relationships between men and women, an inherent discomfort in socializing alone between men and women. And while it seems natural, it starts to translate into how men advocate women for promotions, or how women advocate women to be part of their teams. So unconsciously, this societal discomfort actually carries into the boardroom in many important decisions as well. And I'll try and answer the second part of the question, which is not about what organizations should do, but also as individuals, how should we make a positive difference in our own lives? And I'll just say that we need to be the change that we want to see. And I see a lot of women being more comfortable in decisions that impact themselves and their work. They're less vocal. They want to have less, they don't want to have, non-popular decisions. And if we expect that everybody around us is going to change by ourselves, the change will not happen. So we need to be the change that we expect the organizations to do. And the second thing, and actually probably an advice I'll give to my 20-year-old self, and Osman, spoke about it, is the power of allyship and the power of sponsorship. I think as women, we often, undermine the impact that mentorship can have or sponsorship can have in the organization. And I'll take a personal example. Somewhere mid in my career, me and one of my male colleagues started at the same time in the same team at the same role. And I built my 30, 60, 90 days plan, trying to get deep into my work, trying to be an SME or a subject matter expert in my work. Whereas my male colleague built his 60, 90-day plan based on where are the power centers in the organizations, who makes the decisions in this organization, who are the influencers in these organizations. And as you can anticipate, 90 days back, I was, my manager's pet. I was the front bencher, trying to, do all the grunt work, which nobody else wanted to do, work on tight deadlines, and so on. Whereas my male colleague had access to the most visible projects. And 1 year down the line, I was an indispensable resource. My manager never wanted to make me move out of the team, but my male colleague was ready for his next role. He was ready for his next level. And therefore, I think undermining the networks and allyship that we have in, that can have in your career is important. Through my career, I've still seen that decisions on people and person are still made by the conscious and unconscious biases we carry, and they're only justified by data later. And I think the last thing is, we speak a lot, and even this forum is speaking a lot of external barriers, but there's a lot of internal barriers that women create for themselves. The hesitance to claim achievements, the hesitance to basically be too, to be too vocal, to be too modest to actually claim their achievements, also actually works, in our not in our favor for us to actually serve ourselves well. So I think these are a few things that I've observed through my career, and I think both organizations and individuals can make a positive difference into this.
Thank you, Nupur. I really resonate with what you say about women self-sabotaging ourselves. It really happens a lot. Yeah, so that's also one of the things that we have been trying to address in the Women in FinTech.
Imposter syndrome that we all carry within ourselves. Yes.
Yes, massive imposter syndrome. But well, one step at a time. I believe we will get there. We just need more time. Yeah.
Hopefully not 100 years, but yeah, sooner than that.
Oh yeah. Hopefully we can reduce the 132 years to like half of it. And next, I want to zoom out a little bit, right, from, since we have an international panel today, I'm really interested to hear from Dalal on some of the initiatives and case study that in your country, because we have very different culture, and the way we do things, and the workforce is also quite different. So I'm keen to hear from you. Maybe you can provide us one or two examples of what the Bahrain's EDB has done so far, and what are you planning to do to continue the momentum and initiative in this area?
No, thank you so much for having me today. And from a different perspective, as you rightly mentioned, maybe I can shed more light on a more successful story that we had, where diversification in the workforce has always been important in the DNA of Bahrain. More specifically as well, when it comes to financial services and fintech, we understood the importance of diversity, whether it's from a gender perspective, but also whether it comes from experiences. Diversity in the workforce always brings creativity and always brings a different perspective, which also supports the growth and success of any fintech or organization or financial institution. So to date, if you look at Bahrain's financial services sector, 70% of the workforce are Bahraini, in which 1/3 of those are actually women. We also do see a lot of the STEM program enrollments are 51% are Bahraini in Bahrain. 51% are women in Bahrain, which shows that there is interest from female to go into this fintech and tech space, but also shows that there's encouragement as well for the participation of women in the workplace. But also shows that there is a success story as well. Having diversity in the workforce does bring in profitable businesses, but more successful businesses. Us at the Bahrain Economic Development Board, we support companies to come and set up in Bahrain. And we deal with companies on a daily basis, global companies. And a recent success is, for instance, Citibank. You know, Citi decided that they want to launch a tech hub. And they were looking at different geographies. Where should they establish a tech hub where they need talent in the coding space, but they also need diversity. So Bahrain was actually shortlisted amongst many countries that they were looking at. And they realized that Bahraini coders across all genders actually scored the highest in terms of coding. But also the participation of women coders was significantly higher as well in comparison to other geographies that they're looking at. And we're talking about countries in Europe and Asia and elsewhere. So they decided to actually establish their global tech hub to serve a city globally from Bahrain, recruiting 1,000 Bahraini coders in the next 10 years. To date, they have 22% of their coders are female, and they're looking to ramp that up to 30% by year end. And that's their plan as well, to continue to develop that. And we're not going to stop there. You know, what we need to do is to further enhance that workforce through investing in providing them with the right skills, upskilling talent and training. And we have institutes that we have attracted to come and set up. We have like Temkeen, our labor fund, that does really invest significantly in the workforce to provide the right talent and skills that are needed in the future, whether it's tech or non-tech. We also attracted different coding schools as well to train women. And we do see, for instance, when it comes to one of the, just to give you an example, we have a coding school called Reboot in collaboration with Edu01 out of Paris that has a 2-year full stack coding programs. And the largest enrollment are actually women and across all age groups. So there's actually a mother and her daughter that are enrolled in that program to become coders. We have young, fresh graduate, female coders that are part of that program. And, you know, we're talking about 18 up to 50-year-old women being part of it. And that's, I think, the beauty of this space, the fintech space and the tech space. It's not really, you know, capped in terms of, you know, your gender or your age. And I think, you know, when looking at it, and I know we're talking about gender diversity, but I think looking at it from a diversity in terms of even, you know, your background, which culture you come from, the age is very important in the workforce. And I think that's going to be the trend that we see more so in the board level and on executive level, where you bring in people with different experiences to better serve the customers and better serve the organization to become more profitable and successful.
Thank you. I think I like what you mentioned about the upskilling, because one of the problems of lacking of the talent that we desire is not just the supply from the top of the funnel, but also what about in the middle, right? So after they enter into the industry, and then what's next? Yeah, so I think those upskilling program is really meaningful. And thank you for sharing what you have been doing at Bahrain. And I think we have a few minutes left. I will open to the floor for anyone who has any questions. Anyone?
Ask anything. Don't be shy.
Okay. Oh,
there she is. There's a hand raised there. Please. Can I get her a mic on that corner?
Hi. Can you hear me okay?
yes, we
Okay,
can.
great. So thanks for the good conversation. I think the barriers and best practice to promote gender diversity has been quite a I mean, it's not a new topic, but it's been a topic that we want to address more progressively as we go along. I wonder, from your perspective and experience, what are the, let's say, top 3 key barriers specifically for FinTech industry that you foresee or you have seen that has not been truly solved yet and requires more effort and attention to it? Thank you.
I think the barriers in FinTech are no different than any other industry. I think it starts with the market entitlement, which is what's really the size of the input funnel which can actually get into FinTech, and therefore how does the pyramid look like when you get there? So that challenge is not very specific to FinTech, but that is something that continues as we look at hiring mid to senior positions in FinTech. And I think the second thing would be, what is it that FinTech is a really new industry right now, right? We are struggling to kind of the high growth pace that we are in, the kind of talent which is not available. Diversity sometimes becomes an afterthought because there are so many more challenges to sort out, including the regulatory challenges, including the challenges of growth, including the challenges of volatility in the market, and so on. So diversity sometimes becomes an afterthought than actually, actually being planned through or ingrained through early on. And I think, I think a lot of our talent in FinTech is still very young talent. A lot of teams, a lot of founders are still pretty first-time founders, younger in their journey. So I think that also translates to, the unconscious biases that could creep into, which actually you realize and solve through years of experience. So I would say that, these would be the 3 barriers when I look at more closely the FinTech industry. But Osman, you've been a veteran.
I look at it differently, right? That Singapore actually has so much to offer. I've worked in many countries. Here I see how progressively the government and other institutions are supporting. Look at this FinTech festival. It started 4 or 5 years back. It's now the world's largest festival. 60,000 people visiting. So, and technology-driven learning can happen from anywhere. So we don't have an excuse of you have to be in person. You can sit at home. You can still learn those skills. I think there is a gap between a demand and supply. And banks for ages have not been transforming. And I'm coming from the bank for 30 years, I'm telling you. And that's why the FinTech as a disruption has come in with fantastic solution. So if women wants to embrace that, or we make those information available. So we have IBF, Institute of Banking and Finance. We have IMDA. We have SFA. We have many such programs where 75% of your course fee is reimbursed by the government. So how many countries in the world have that? And like it or not, like Singapore is kind of seen as a go-to place when it comes to digital technology for the subcontinent or gateway to Asia. So there's a lot. I think we need to do a better job in communicating to Heartland, to HDBs and other places where people perhaps don't know that those are available. And cybersecurity as a program, right? Imagine most of the senior roles in cybersecurity are Western people who have seen these threats earlier, and that's why they have taken those senior positions. And that's a risk which is going to grow in next 15, 20, 30 years. So if there is a program where women are going heavily into learning cybersecurity modules, they all have a job. And you can change the ratio flip suddenly because the demand says it's in that side. And if you can supply that with gender diversity or women in that place, suddenly in 5 years you will see a different picture. So I think there are a lot of avenues. We all need to do a better job in terms of communicating and sharing with countries like Bahrain and others. And connectivity is no more an issue today because of this digital world.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the great question. Thanks. I think we are running out of time. Thank you for all my speakers. And before we go off, I just want to mention the SFA actually just released the latest FinTech talent report for this year. So you can scan the QR code and download the report to learn more. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you.